Last week on Legally Kidnapped.
Good evening. Our top story this week. The state of Connecticut has certified 10,000 professional CPS rats in the first 3 months since the release of the state's new mandated reporter training videos. Portland, Maine is now said to be a hotspot for human traffickers who are targeting young girls to work in the $32 billion a year sex trafficking industry. In Indiana, foster parents are quitting because they don't think that they're being paid enough. And in Massachusetts, foster kids take too many pills. In North Carolina, a DSS director who was fired had, as it turns out, previously raised concerns about the head of the Youth and Family Division before her firing. This after a string of failure to protect cases in North Carolina, which is causing questions to be asked about a lack of adequate oversight of Mecklenburg County CPS agents. In Tennessee, the Dixon County Sheriff, District Attorney, and a few system sucks are bitching up a storm claiming that CPS agents aren't doing their job in serious child abuse cases. And of course, the governor of Tennessee is sticking up for the child protective industry by saying that although the deaths of 31 kids last year is distressing, there is no evidence of wrongdoing by the child protective industry. In California this week, Governor Jerry Brown vetoes a bill that would allow children to have more than 2 legal parents, saying that such a bill could have unintended consequences. Governor Brown does, however, sign legislation that would prevent kids from being thrown into foster care when their illegal immigrant parents are detained or deported, and another bill that would allow foster kids to stay in their original schools after being snatched from their parents. And California also becomes the first state in the country to ban gay repair therapy for kids whose parents don't want them to be gay and want to try to fix the problem with psychology. A new study telling us that, which we already know, says that kids are basically unprotected from violent and raunchy television programs. In North Dakota, the Federal Bureau of Indian Affairs plans to take over of the Spirit Lake child welfare system. And in Florida, the state's new Jerry Sandusky-inspired child abuse reporting law goes into effect, making it so that anybody at all who fails to report every little scrape on the knee can face fines of up to $1 million. In Nebraska, the state finally wakes up to the fact that they're stealing too many kids, as the number of foster kids in the state hits a 12-year low. In Utah, the state gets a federal waiver and claims that the child protective industry is going to use more money to pump into family preservation programs designed to keep kids out of foster care. And in Oklahoma, the child protective industry plans to privatize some of that state's child welfare system in hopes that private agencies will better protect the state's foster kids. In Russia this week, the government is flipping out after CPS agents in Finland wrongfully snatch another kid from a Russian family, especially since Finnish CPS agents have already snatched more than 50 kids. In Germany, a judge rules that homeschooling damages kids in a move to force integration upon all of their youngest citizens. In New Zealand, a social worker in training to be a CPS agent is busted for selling methamphetamine. And in Newfoundland, Canada, a real father is accused of threatening to kill a CPS agent who stole his kid. In Australia, a female child protection worker has been accused of grooming and inappropriately touching a teenage girl. A leading academic writes a damning critique of the Australian child welfare system, pointing out that they're still housing stolen kids in motel rooms. And a group of Aboriginals is seeking changes to the child protective industry in the Northern Territories after a judge makes more and more decisions that are contrary to best practice ideals, which they're warning is risking another stolen generation because she's too quick to remove Indigenous children permanently from their families. A court orders 2 girls back to Italy after being taken to Australia by their mother in a divorce case. A 13-year-old boy is in hiding after running away from the Australian foster care system in an attempt to be reunited with his mother. In England, the British Association of Social Workers wants the same online protection afforded to celebrities, claiming that their job puts them at risk of online attacks after a website exposing them for the frauds that they are was recently taken down. A couple smuggles their baby out of a hospital in a paper bag just hours after British social workers banned them from having custody of it. The head of the Rochdale Social Services quits to avoid disciplinary action over a child grooming scandal where nobody bothered to do anything about it for years. A young woman snatches a baby from a social services center and goes on the run for 2 days. An audit by the government of Slovakia is raising suspicion of wrongful adoptions in the UK after several Slovak families wrongfully have their kids snatched by British social workers. And there's one less British social worker to worry about after one dies while driving her car in the city. In entertainment news this week, Kate Gosselin is accused of beating her kids with a wooden spoon, and as it turns out, the accuser is a friend of her ex-husband John's who wrote a book about her. In California, a former CPS agent who was already serving time for sexual abuse is now charged with another assault as a 5th victim comes forward. In New Jersey, a former firefighter and foster parent is on trial for sexual sexually abusing his foster daughter. A Pennsylvania school teacher is charged with failing to report an alleged rape involving a student. Secret files from the Boy Scouts of America reveals a pattern of child molestation in Washington. And the state of Washington settles a case for $5.3 million with 4 kids who were placed in an abusive foster home. In Florida, a CPS agent is charged with falsifying records by logging visits to potential target children that she didn't actually make and stealing money from the agency by using their cell phone and agency gas card for personal use. In Kentucky, a father is arrested after beating a neighbor who he blamed for reporting him to CPS, then taking his gun and pointing it at the CPS agent who showed up at his door. In Texas, the judge who beat the shit out of his daughter with a belt, which went viral on YouTube last year, is one step closer to being put back on the bench after waiving his right to appeal a sanction from the State Commission on Judicial Conduct. In Pennsylvania, a neighbor and a CPS agent are both completely stunned after a man beats the crap out of his 3-year-old foster daughter. In Alaska, Anchorage police are dealing with a false kidnapping report after a mother took her baby and left the hospital. And finally, tonight, in Connecticut, a CPS agent was charged with buying alcohol for minors. For these stories and all the latest dirt on the child protective industry, visit www.legallykidnapped.com. And until next week, this is Baby LK, over and out.